The elevator doors close, and the silence inside them is the loudest thing Iron Deshaun Calloway has heard in 8 months. He doesn't look at his reflection in the polished steel walls. He already knows what he looks like. He already knows what they're going to see the moment that door opens. His left hand grips the folder of papers against his side. His right hand rests over his belly. 8 months. Full. Heavy. Undeniable. The numbers above the elevator tick upward. 42. 43. 44. He tells himself it doesn't matter that his hands are trembling. He tells himself the way his breath keeps catching isn't weakness. It's the weight. Just the physical weight. The baby pressing against his ribs, shifting with every floor the elevator climbs. Not nerves. Not fear. He's only here for signatures. He repeats that 3 more times as the elevator climbs. Only here for signatures. That's all this is. He spent 6 weeks building toward this appointment. 6 weeks getting the paperwork together, making sure every clause was clean, every term was fair, every exit was sealed. 6 weeks convincing himself he could walk into this building, face 3 men who made the East Coast underworld move on a word, hand them a pen and walk back out. He is not here to talk. He is not here to explain. He is definitely not here to cry. 47. 48. Penthouse floor. The doors open with a soft chime. The kind of sound that doesn't belong to a place this dangerous, like someone chose it specifically to make people forget where they were for just long enough to step off the elevator without hesitating. Iron doesn't forget where he is. He never has. Blackthorn Tower's executive penthouse looks exactly the way he left it. Dark walnut floors. Floor-to-ceiling glass overlooking the city. 48 floors of height turning the streets below into something almost decorative. The conference table runs the full length of the south wall. The lighting is low and deliberate. The kind of room designed to communicate that the people inside it own the view and the street and probably the building 2 blocks over. And standing at the far end of it. All 3 of them, Riven, Cashin, Noctis, they're mid-conversation when Iron steps off the elevator. Something low between them, the kind of exchange that doesn't need volume because the people having it don't feel the need to convince anyone of anything. Riven stands with his back to the window, arms crossed, silhouetted against the city's glow. Cashin leans against the corner of the conference table, scrolling something on a slim black tablet, brow slightly furrowed. Noctis is the only one standing completely still, hands loose at his sides, staring at a point on the floor 3 feet in front of him like he's waiting for it to tell him something. Then the elevator doors chime shut behind Iron. All 3 of them turn at the same time, and the room changes. Not loudly. There's no gasp, no sudden movement, no visible alarm. But something happens in the air between the moment they look up and the moment their brains finish processing what they're looking at. A shift, immediate and total, the kind of atmospheric change that happens before a structure takes damage. Riven's arms fall from his chest. Cashin's tablet goes still in his hands. Noctis's eyes move, down, then slowly back up, then down again. They smell him before they fully process what they're seeing. And what they are seeing is something none of them were prepared for. Iron watches them take it in. He had prepared for this. He'd spent 3 sleepless nights, genuinely sleepless, sitting in the blue dark of his apartment with his hand over his belly and his attorney's paperwork on the coffee table, preparing for every version of this moment. The anger, the accusations, the cold, dismissive silence. He'd rehearsed what he would say to anger, what he would say to denial, what he would say to the particular cruelty that men like these were capable of when they felt disrespected. He had not prepared for what he's looking at now. Not one of them looks angry. All 3 of them look afraid. That stops him. Not disgusted. Not cold. Afraid. Riven Blackthorn, who walked into a federal hearing with 3 charges against his name and didn't blink once. Looks like the floor just lurched. His jaw is locked, jaw muscles working, but his eyes are doing something they have never done in any of the 9 months Iron spent in the same rooms as him. Cashin has gone completely still. and Cashin is never completely still. Noctis is staring at Iron's belly like it's something that requires very careful handling. Like it is information he does not know how to file. Iron forces himself to move. One step forward. Then another. The weight of him is different now than the last time he stood in this room. Heavier, more present, impossible to minimize or read as anything other than what it is. He walks to the conference table and sets the folder down flat on the surface, then slides it across the polished wood until it stops in front of them. His voice comes out level. I need your signatures on the last 3 tabs. Silence. None of them reach for the folder. The quiet stretches long enough to become its own kind of sentence. Long enough that it stops being the silence of people who are shocked and becomes the silence of people who are calculating. Iron keeps his hand on the table. He does not look at Noctis. He does not look at Riven. He looks at Cashin because Cashin is always the one whose reaction is most worth watching, and right now Cashin is looking at him like he's trying to solve something that has too many variables. Then Cashin says it. Quiet. Barely above a whisper. The voice of someone who has just been handed a result that doesn't match any of the math they've been working with. That's impossible. Hi viewers, if you found out something you had believed about yourself for 8 full months was a deliberately constructed lie, would you want to know the truth? Or would you rather keep living inside the certainty you already built your life around? Iron doesn't answer Cashin. He just straightens up, keeps his hand resting over his belly, holds the silence back, and watches them. He watches Riven take one slow step forward. He watches Cashin close his eyes for exactly 1 second. The specific kind of pause that happens when someone is recalculating something and the new number doesn't fit. He watches Noctis, the quietest of the 3, the one who always waited until everyone else had already spoken, finally open his mouth. Noctis doesn't look at the divorce papers. He looks directly at Iron's stomach. And he asks the question that every single person in that room already knows is going to pull the rest of the night apart. Whose pup is that? 8 months ago, the dress code for the Voss Foundation Gala was black tie. Iron wore white. Not because he wanted to stand out, he never wanted that, but because Cashin had selected the suit 3 weeks in advance and Iron hadn't had the energy to push back. He hadn't had the energy for much by that point. The marriage had been 9 months old and already moving like something with a slow, invisible leak. Everyone in their orbit could sense it. No one said it out loud. That was how things worked in the circles they moved in. The more serious the problem, the more carefully it was not discussed. The gala was at the Meridian Hotel's Grand Ballroom. 400 guests spread across an event space designed to make everyone inside feel like they were part of something exclusive enough to be worth attending. Politicians, syndicate heirs, legacy media figures, a handful of people so embedded in private power structures that their names appeared in no public record at all. The kind of room where every handshake was also a transaction and every smile had at least 2 meanings. Iron remembers the champagne. He remembers not drinking it. He almost never drank at public events. And then someone pressing a glass into his hand during a toast, he couldn't avoid without making a visible point of avoiding it. He remembers taking 1 sip to satisfy the moment and intending to set it down. He remembers the glass being replaced without him noticing when he looked away. He remembers thinking 45 minutes into the evening that the room felt slightly tilted. He woke up in a private medical suite connected to the hotel. White walls, filtered light. A doctor he had never met before, sitting at a small table across from him with a folder. The doctor introduced herself as Dr. Marin Lyle. She explained, in language that was measured and specific, that there had been a poisoning incident during the event, a contaminated batch targeting high-profile guests. She said Iron was fortunate. She said the compound had been fast-acting but non-lethal at his dosage level. Then she opened the folder. And she explained that there had been internal damage. Reproductive damage. She used clinical language. She was thorough. She had documents, scans, lab reports, a typed summary with his patient ID printed at the top. She explained that the chemical exposure had caused irreversible injury to his reproductive system. that carrying a pregnancy was biologically not possible for him anymore. She said it gently. It did not land gently. He lay in that suite for 2 days before signing the release paperwork. He told the triplets he was fine. He said it clearly and early enough that follow-up questions would feel intrusive, and it worked because they were men who respected stated limits. He told himself the same thing. Fine, completely fine, every morning for 3 weeks until he started to half believe it. What he couldn't convince himself of, what he still cannot explain, standing in this penthouse with all 3 of them staring at what medically should not exist, is why that diagnosis had landed less like news and more like confirmation. Confirmation of what he had quietly feared since month 4 of the marriage. That he had nothing real to offer them. That the arrangement had always been more political architecture than anything human. That the space growing between them wasn't something wrong happening. It was the default state revealing itself. He left 4 months after the gala. Not with a scene. Not with a confrontation. He just stopped coming back to the tower. And when the silence on their end matched the silence he offered, when no one appeared at his door or sent a car or made a call that felt like it actually wanted him there, he started making appointments with his attorney. He started putting language to the thing that had been true for a long time. He started building toward today. Now, standing in this room, looking at 3 faces that do not look like men who wanted him gone, he can't square the math. If the diagnosis was real, what is growing inside him? And if the diagnosis was constructed, then someone sat across from him in a white room with a forged folder and made a deliberate choice. The question isn't which. The question is why. Riven's voice cuts through the silence first. No warmth in it. No hesitation. We're running a medical confirmation, not a request. DNA. Tonight. He's already pulling out his phone, already dialing. Ashford is in the building. Iron doesn't argue. He doesn't have the instinct to argue, because he wants the confirmation as badly as Riven does. He wants someone to look at a document and tell him what is actually real. He wants one solid fact in a night that has been nothing but the floor giving way in slow pieces. Fine, he says. Noctis and Cashin exchange something. A look so fast and so loaded that Iron can't fully decode it before it's over. 20 minutes later, Dr. Ashford walks through the penthouse doors. The Blackthorn family's personal physician for 11 years. A man who Iron has encountered exactly 4 times over the course of the marriage, always briefly, always professionally. He has struck Iron in all 4 of those meetings as someone constitutionally difficult to rattle. The moment Dr. Ashford steps through the door and sees Iron standing in the center of the room. 8 months visible, unmistakable, carrying what should not exist. The doctor's face does something Iron has never seen it do. He goes pale. Not surprised pale. Not the pale of someone absorbing unexpected news. The pale of someone who recognizes something that they were specifically told would never be present again. He stands very still just inside the doorway. Then he sets his bag on the table, opens it, works in silence for a moment, and then he looks up at Iron with the expression of a man who has just found something in a room where it was absolutely not supposed to be. These records, he says, slowly, like the words are coming out with resistance. He stops. He looks at Iron for a long, still moment. These records were altered. Dr. Ashford does not sit down. He stands at the edge of the conference table with Iron's original medical files spread open across the surface, and he works through them methodically, one by one, side by side, with the concentrated steadiness of a man who already knows what the comparison is going to show him and is verifying it anyway because the situation requires documents, not intuition. The original infertility report, the one Iron signed and dated 8 months ago, sitting in a white suite in a hotel he had been carried to while unconscious, is a forgery. Not a careless one. Every detail of the formatting holds. The clinic letterhead is correct. The patient identification numbers match. The diagnostic timestamps align with the timeline of Iron's hospital stay. The document would pass a standard administrative review without a flag. But the underlying data, The scans attached to the file, the lab analysis, the cellular breakdown that Dr. Lyle had walked Iron through page by page, belongs to someone else entirely. The biological profile in those pages does not belong to Iron. Dr. Ashford pulls up the original health file from the Blackthorn medical server. A routine workup from 6 weeks before the gala. Standard blood work. Comprehensive baseline panels, the kind the triplets' physician ran for every member of the household on a rotating quarterly schedule. No reproductive abnormalities. No damage. No indication of any vulnerability to the kind of compound Dr. Lyle described. Iron was completely healthy 6 weeks before a champagne glass found his hand at a gala, and he woke up the next morning being told otherwise. He reads the comparison twice. Then he steps back from the table. His hand goes to his belly. Automatic, the protective reflex that has become more instinct than decision over the past several months. He breathes through his nose. He keeps his voice at the same level he has been keeping it all evening because losing it right now will not get him the answers that are rapidly becoming the only thing in the room that matters. He looks at the 3 men across the table. You let me believe I was broken. Nobody answers. Not right away. Riven's expression doesn't move. It locks, the specific freezing that happens when he is processing something too significant to react to until he fully understands what he's reacting to. Noctis has both hands braced flat on the table, jaw set, staring down at the files like they personally owe him something. Cassian is looking at the open documents. Not at Iron. At the documents. That is a detail Iron files away. The specialist, Ashford says, his tone careful and measured. Dr. Marin Lyle, Halcyon Private Clinic. He pauses in the way that signals the information following is going to matter. I verified her license number this evening when this situation was first flagged to me. Her practice closed 7 months ago. Another pause. Her current whereabouts are not known. The clinic is gone. The physician is gone. The hotel surveillance footage from the private suite where Iron spent 2 days, footage that should have been archived in the Meridian's own secure system, is missing. Ashford's contact at the hotel confirmed that the backup server logged a manual format request 3 days after Iron signed the release papers and walked out. Someone cleaned the room from the digital record. Left the forged paperwork behind as the only version of the story that Iron would ever be able to access. Iron thinks about every decision he made in the months after that suite. Every conversation he pulled back from. Every small extension of trust he didn't make because he believed he had nothing worth building toward. 8 months of a life constructed around a diagnosis that was written by a woman who no longer exists in any findable record. The fury moves through him slowly. That's the worst kind. Not the kind that spikes and burns out. The kind that moves layer by layer until it reaches the surface, having passed through everything on the way. How far in advance would someone need access to build this? Iron asks. Ashford unfolds his hands. The file architecture and the document dating suggest it was prepared before the gala. Possibly several weeks prior. So it wasn't reactive. It wasn't someone panicking after the night went sideways and covering what they could. It was a prepared operation. Someone had decided weeks before Iron ever set foot in that ballroom that he was going to wake up in a white room believing something false about his own body. They had the paperwork ready. They had the specialist ready. They had the cleanup plan in place before the event even began. Riven is already on 2 phones before Ashford finishes. He's pulling in his head of security and 2 senior members of his personal team, issuing short, precise directives about access logs, internal movement records, anyone with clearance who touched the Blackthorn medical system in the past 9 months. Noctis has moved to the window again, facing the city. His hands are in his pockets, but his shoulders are not relaxed. Cassian has walked to the far corner of the room, where the secondary server terminal is housed behind a locked panel, and he's in it now, moving through the Blackthorn encrypted drive, the internal archive that only the 3 of them and a small number of senior operational staff can access. His hands are fast. His face is the specific mask of concentration that means he is looking for something and he already suspects where it is. His hands stop. He found it. Iron watches Cashin read the screen. Watches his expression do something controlled and tight. Not the reaction of discovery. The reaction of confirmation. The kind of tightening that happens when what you suspected turns out to be true and knowing you were right does not feel like winning. Cashin. Riven's voice from across the room. Low. Precise. A warning delivered inside the syllables of a name. Cashin doesn't answer. He reads the screen a second time. Then he turns the laptop so that Iron can see it from where he's standing. A single encrypted file inside the Blackthorn drive, labeled plainly against the dark interface. Genesis lineage. I found it 6 weeks ago, Cashin says. His voice is quiet, flat. I didn't know what it was. He opens the file. Contains one sentence. Subject ER7 can produce rare alpha triplets. The room is completely silent. Iron stares at his own clinical designation. ER7, 2 characters and a number stripping out everything that makes a person, and feels the floor of the world shift under him in a way that has nothing to do with the physical weight he's carrying. He has been tagged. Not loved. Not chosen. Not even failed as a partner. Tagged. Like a data point in a study someone else designed. Like a variable that needs to be maintained in a controlled state until results can be extracted. R7. Iron reads it one more time. Gives it another second. Like the letters might rearrange themselves into something less clinical if he looks long enough. They don't. Ashford is the first to speak, and when he does his voice has shifted, slower, more careful. The way voices change when the information being delivered is the kind that can't be walked back once it's said. I've seen this designation before, he says. Not attached to a specific patient file. In an archival notation. Research documentation from approximately 12 years ago, before the Blackthorn medical system underwent its last complete overhaul. He pauses. The methodology, the clinical shorthand, it matches a research group that was active on the East Coast through the early 2000s. They didn't publish publicly. They operated through a series of shell foundations with medical research covers. He pulls the laptop toward himself, opens a second file from his own secure drive. A scanned document. Old formatting, dense clinical language, the kind of record that reduces people to biological functions and measurement outcomes. The document is about bloodlines. Not in any symbolic sense. Literally, specific, documented, regionally traced hereditary lines. Certain omega genetic profiles. Rare, uncommon enough to be functionally unknown outside of specialized research circles. Carry a chromosomal and hormonal architecture that makes alpha triplet conception not just possible but reliably replicable. The biology is specific. It comes down to receptor compatibility, hormonal sequencing across a bonding cycle, something in the cellular structure that responds to multi-alpha proximity in a way that standard omega biology does not. Most omega pairings with triplet alphas produce a single heir, or no heir at all. The biological incompatibilities are too significant. The ER lineage, Iron's maternal bloodline, traceable across 4 documented generations, produces alpha triplets. Every time it has been recorded. The room is quiet for a moment that feels longer than it is. Iron sits with that. He sits with it and looks down at his hands. Both of them flat over his belly now, without him having consciously placed them there. He thinks about his mother, who died when he was 11 and never said anything about her family history that he can now recall. He thinks about the 2 days in the hotel suite. He thinks about Dr. Lyle sitting across from him with her folder, voice gentle, eyes careful, telling him something had been taken. They didn't poison him to damage him. They poisoned him to confirm he could survive the process. To verify the bloodline held under stress before deciding what to do with access to it. The test wasn't destructive. The test was evaluative. Whose document is this? Riven asks. His voice is even. Controlled in the way it gets when he is deciding how angry to be and wants the full picture before he commits. Ashford picks his words. The watermark is partially degraded but legible enough to trace. The notational style and data categories match documented outputs from a private research consortium that went dormant in the early 2010s. Publicly, they were registered as a medical research nonprofit. Privately, they were funded by a combination of syndicate capital and political family endowments, specifically families that had been experiencing alpha succession failures over multiple generations. They needed heirs, Noctis says, not a question. They needed genetically compatible production. Yes. Cashin sits back in his chair. He has been quiet since opening the file, the particular quiet that Iron has catalogued over the last hour as the quiet of someone managing information rather than absorbing it. He is not surprised. He is handling the reveal of something he has been holding. Iron keeps that observation close. Who had active interest in the lineage? Riven asks. Ashford lays out what the records indicate. Old money syndicate families whose alpha airlines had thinned to the point of political vulnerability. Political houses with enough generational wealth to fund long-term biological research but insufficient natural succession to maintain their standing. Institutional power structures that understood, in ways the broader public never would, how deeply biological inheritance shaped who held authority in the world they operated in. These were not people who made short-term decisions. These were people who ran 12-year projects. Iron thinks about the year before the gala. Every event he attended as part of the Blackthorn Circle. Every introduction that had felt slightly too deliberate. The handshake that lingered a second longer than courtesy required. The conversation that kept circling back to heirs and legacy and the future of bloodlines in a world that was changing. He had written it off as the preoccupations of people with too much money and too little to fear. He had been polite and non-committal and moved on. He hadn't understood what he was being appraised for. The pregnancy didn't happen by accident, he says. Silence. Nobody contradicts him. And then something cold and clarifying moves through Iron. Not fear, something sharper. The understanding that settles in the body rather than just the mind. None of this was random. The marriage, arranged through channels he had been too young and too grateful to question fully. The gala placement. The poisoning, precise enough to test without killing. The false diagnosis designed to make him emotionally surrender and physically distance himself from three alphas who, whatever their failures, represented a protective structure. Someone needed Iron Deshaun Calloway exactly where he ended up. Alone. Convinced he was broken. Raising a child he couldn't explain. Away from anyone who might have the resources and the motivation to protect him from what was being built around him. And still pregnant. Still producing exactly what the project required. Someone inside this building, Iron says, and he takes his time with each word, has been in contact with whoever designed this. The statement hits the room differently than he expects. Not with explosion. With the specific heavy stillness of a sentence that has confirmed something people were already afraid of. Riven goes rigid. A controlled tension, but total. Noctis turns his head, slowly, toward one of his brothers. Both of them looking at the same thing Iron is looking at. The one alpha in the room who, across 40 minutes of revealing information, has not once looked genuinely surprised by any of it. Cashin is looking at the table, still not at Iron. At the table. Before anyone speaks, the building's security panel on the far wall emits a single sharp tone. A red indicator light pulses. Once, twice, 3 times. Riven's earpiece activates. His head of security's voice cuts through. Short, compressed, wrong. 2 words reach Iron clearly across the room. Safe house. Compromised. Riven looks at Noctis. Noctis is already moving toward the weapons panel behind the left wall. Then the first gunshot hits the exterior glass. 48 floors up, a shot that requires equipment, planning, and at least 12 hours of prepositioning. The glass holds, but the impact sends a crack branching across the lower panel like a fracture map. The sound of it shuts everything else down. This was not a divorce meeting. It never was. The glass holds. That's the first thing. Reinforced. Spect after an incident 4 years ago that nobody in this building discusses outside these walls. But the impact cracks the lower left panel in a long, branching split, and the sound of it hits like a physical concussion. Deep, final. The kind of sound that means a decision was made about this room before anyone inside it knew they were in a room that had been decided about. The emergency lighting drops to red before the echo clears. Elevator bank. Locked. Security sweep. Active. A low mechanical pulse cycling through the subfloors. Glass doors sealing the stairwells in sequence. Automated protocols Iron has never seen deployed in the 9 months he spent living in this building. They are thorough. They are fast. They are also, from the sound of movement below, methodical, coordinated, already inside the building's perimeter, not going to be enough. Noctis has the weapons cabinet open before the second shot. He moves the way men move when urgency has become routine over enough years. No wasted motion, no hesitation, just the direct line between where he is and what needs to happen. He doesn't rush. Rushing is for people who haven't done this before. He works the panel, takes what he needs, and turns. Get away from the glass. He doesn't look at Iron when he says it. His voice is flat and operational. Center of the room. Right now. Iron moves. He's not someone who panics. 8 months of isolation, of navigating a situation he didn't fully understand while managing something growing inside him that changed the physics of every room he entered, that had confirmed a number of things about his own character, and the absence of panic under pressure was one of them. But his heart is doing something uncooperative, and the baby is shifting. Not a kick, a slow, full-body realignment, the kind of movement that happens when the body carrying it is flooding with adrenaline, and he needs to manage his breathing or the physical stress is going to compound into a separate and very immediate problem. He gets to the center of the room. He plants his feet. He breathes. Riven is on 2 phones simultaneously, moving toward the secondary security terminal behind the east wall panel. His voice has dropped to the quiet register that means he is operating at the far end of his own capacity. Each word clipped, exact, no syllable wasted. Who breached the lower perimeter? A pause. How many entry points? Another pause, and then something crosses his face that Iron reads as the specific expression of someone receiving a number that is worse than their working estimate. Pull the 4th floor garage team. Now, move them to B3. The building's main power cuts. Not a flicker. A full, immediate drop. 1 second the overhead lighting is on. The next there is only the red emergency strip running along the floor line and the ambient city glow pressing in through the cracked glass panel. The city is lit. Blackthorn Tower's penthouse is not. Cashin moves to the far corner, pulls the secondary terminal from the locked drawer beneath the server rack, and starts working. Whatever he's doing fast and silent. His face in the red light is completely controlled. No explanation. No narration. Just work. Noctis crosses back to Iron and holds something out without comment. A compact emergency transmitter, small enough to fit in a jacket pocket. The kind of device that pings an encrypted GPS coordinate every 30 seconds to a secure channel. Keep that on your person, Noctis says. Do not set it down. Do not give it to anyone else. Iron takes it, clips it to the inside of his jacket. Feels the slight weight of it and understands exactly what it means. It means that Noctis is already running the calculation where they get separated, and he is putting insurance in place against that outcome. That is not a comforting calculation to watch someone make. From below them, 12 floors down, 15 at most, comes the sound of controlled entry. Not explosive breach, not blunt force entry. Methodical. A team moving through the building the way teams move when they have been briefed on the layout. When they know where the stairwell gaps are. When they understand how the lockout sequence redirects movement rather than stopping it, and they've accounted for that in their planning. These people have been inside this building before, or someone gave them everything they needed to move through it like they had. Riven ends his calls and turns around. His eyes move to Cashin. 1 second, a look with weight in it, layered and contained. Something that has been building between them for longer than tonight. Then his eyes move to Iron, and the look shifts entirely. More direct, less calculated. There's a maintenance elevator on the south side of the building. It's not connected to the automated lockout. It runs on the secondary power circuit, which is still active. He moves, crossing the room in 3 long strides, positioning himself at Iron's left. We move in 60 seconds. Can you do that? Iron looks at him. Yes. We're not running. Just moving fast and staying low. I know. Another impact against the glass, higher this time, different angle. Second, external position. A minimum of 2 teams working coordinated lines of fire, which means resources, which means whoever sent these people did not send them carelessly. Iron breathes. He counts the seconds between impacts. Tracks the sound of movement below against the interior of the building. His mind is doing the thing it does under pressure, sorting, categorizing, extracting usable information from the noise. He has always been good at this. He just never expected to be using it here at 48 floors, 8 months pregnant, in a room that was supposed to be a simple administrative stop. The baby shifts again. He presses his hand flat against his belly and holds it there. Not yet, he thinks, to no one in particular. Not yet. Noctis goes to the south wall and pushes the panel. It swings inward cleanly, well-maintained hinges, a passage designed to be used quickly and quietly. Behind it, a narrow corridor, dark, concrete walls, the smell of recycled air and industrial sealant. Move, he says. They move. Riven first, flashlight in his offhand, clearing the passage ahead. Iron second. One hand on the wall because the floor has a slight decline he didn't anticipate and the dark is complete past the first turn. Cashin behind him, close but not crowding. Noctis last, pulling the panel shut with a soft, final click. 2 floors down via the maintenance stairs, moving at Iron's pace, which is not slow but is not fast either, and nobody says anything about it. At the base of the second stairwell, a heavy fire door opens onto a freight platform. Concrete, low clearance, industrial lighting on a backup circuit, a manual freight elevator at the far end. Manual means it doesn't require the building's main power. Manual means it isn't in the automated lockout. Manual means it works. They get in. Riven operates the controls. The platform begins its descent, slow, mechanical, the kind of system that was built to last rather than to impress. The kind of system no one thinks about, which is exactly why it's still functional right now when every other vertical exit in the building is sealed. Iron leans against the freight elevator wall. He keeps his hand on his belly and he breathes and he listens to the building around them as they drop through it. Floor by floor, the sounds of the security response, the distant movement of the team working their way up through sealed corridors. Riven's comms activate on descent. His head of security's voice, from the ground floor. We have one from the entry team, captured at the B2 stairwell. He's talking. Noctis keys his comms. What's he saying? A pause. The kind of pause that happens when someone on the other end needs to verify what they heard before repeating it. Then the voice comes back through. He says they weren't sent to kill him, sir. The elevator drops in silence. They were sent to take the baby. Iron does not move. He stands in the center of that freight elevator with both hands pressed flat against his belly and feels the full weight of 8 months compress into this single sentence. He thinks about the file, about ER7, about a research group that ran 12-year studies, about a diagnosis that was prepared weeks before the event that supposedly caused it, about a marriage that began in rooms he was too young to read clearly. About every moment of distance he attributed to his own inadequacy when the distance was being manufactured around him. He thinks about what it means that they weren't here for him. They were here for the child. They were here for what ER7 produces. The elevator reaches the ground floor. The doors open onto the loading bay, concrete, industrial lighting, a heavy rolling door at the far end with the city pressing in around its edges. Nobody moves. Nobody speaks. Iron stares at the exit in front of him and understands, with a clarity that leaves no room for anything else, that the divorce papers he carried into this building tonight are the least important document he owns. and that whatever is coming for them next has already been in motion for much longer than any of them knew. Drop a comment right now. Did you trust Cashin? Because that look he kept giving the table instead of Iron when everything was being revealed? The way he found that file 6 weeks ago and said nothing? I see you already clocking it. Part 6 is dropping and Cashin's truth is going to land different than anything you're expecting. What do you think he was hiding? And was it actually protection or something far worse? Iron's palm connects with Cashin's face before either of them fully registers the decision. The sound of it fills the loading bay. Sharp. Final. Nobody moves. Riven goes still. Noctis turns from the rolling door and looks at his brother, at the red mark already rising on Cashin's jaw, and says nothing. The only sounds left in the space are the distant building alarm cycling through its sequence 3 floors above them and the low hum of the freight elevator resetting behind them. Cashin does not raise his hand to his face. He does not step back. He stands exactly where he was standing and takes it. That is almost worse. Because a man who absorbs a hit without flinching is a man who believes he deserved it. And a man who believes he deserved it is a man carrying something he decided to carry alone. Iron's hand is shaking. He keeps it at his side. 6 weeks, he says. You found that file 6 weeks ago. Cashin says nothing. And you said nothing. Iron's voice does not rise. He keeps it low, and even the way you keep a knife flat when you're not ready to use it yet. For 6 weeks I was out there, alone. Carrying something I couldn't explain. And you had the file. You knew what it meant. Cashin's jaw works. Still nothing. Cashin. That's Riven from the edge of the room. One word. A warning. Let him speak, Iron says without looking away from Cashin. A long pause. Then Cashin breathes out through his nose. I didn't know the full scope of it when I found it, he says. His voice is quiet, controlled. The voice of someone choosing every word like each one is a step on unstable ground. The file name meant nothing to me without context. I ran a trace on the origin point. That took 3 weeks. When the trace completed and I understood what R7 meant, he stops. His eyes close briefly. I understood what it meant about you. What it meant about why the marriage was arranged the way it was. What it meant about what you were carrying. And you still said nothing. I said nothing, Cashin agrees. Why? He looks at Iron directly now. The mask he's been wearing all evening. The careful, managed stillness. Slips just enough to show what's underneath it. Not cold calculation. Not indifference. Something raw and tired and honest. Because the moment I surfaced what I knew, whoever planted that file would know I'd found it. They had access to our internal systems. That was already clear, which meant they had ears somewhere inside this operation. The second they knew their cover was blown, you became an immediate extraction target. He pauses. You were safer out there believing what you believed, not knowing you were being tracked, not knowing what they wanted. He looks at Iron's belly. I let you hate me because hatred keeps people alive longer than love does. The loading bay is silent. Iron stares at him. He wants to argue with the logic. He wants to find the flaw in it, the selfish thread, the piece that reveals this was about control or convenience rather than protection. He is looking for it. He can't find it. That doesn't make it right. It doesn't erase 8 months of isolation built on a lie he could have been told. It doesn't give back the nights he spent alone running calculations about his own body that were all built on a forged foundation. But the logic is not broken. And Cashin is still standing there, still holding Iron's gaze, still not defending himself beyond the truth. Riven steps away from the wall. Who planted the file? Cashin turns to him. That's what I was trying to determine before tonight accelerated. The trace led me to an access node in our secondary system, a dormant account that's been active in short windows over the past 2 years. He pauses. The account belongs to a senior clearance holder. Someone with legitimate reason to be in the system. A name, Noctis says. Cashin says a name. Riven's entire body goes rigid. Noctis closes his eyes for exactly 3 seconds. Iron watches both of them, watches what the name does to the two men who don't rattle easily, and understands that what Cashin has just said is not the name of an outsider. The network above the Blackthorn operation is older than any of them, and it is not finished. The name Cashin says belongs to a man Iron has shaken hands with twice. Senator Darius Alcott Wren. Clean record. Public philanthropy. 3 terms in office built on a platform of institutional reform and accountability in private medical research. A man who spent his career standing in front of cameras talking about protecting vulnerable populations from exploitation. A man who, according to the access logs Cashin has spent 6 weeks tracing, has had a back channel into the Blackthorn operational system for 2.5 years. Longer than the marriage. Longer than the gala. Longer than Iron ever lived in this building. This was planned before any of them knew each other in the way they know each other now. Riven is on the phone within 30 seconds of the name being said. He doesn't call his security team. He calls someone above his security team. A number Iron has never heard him use before, a contact so far removed from visible operations that the call is placed without a name and answered without a greeting. 2 sentences. A location. The timeline. Whatever he sets in motion, it moves fast. The safe house they relocate to is a building Iron has never seen. 3 floors, reinforced, off the grid in a way that means the power runs on its own circuit and the address doesn't appear in any Blackthorn record that touches an external server. They arrive through a basement entrance. No windows on the ground level. The kind of place that was designed specifically for the category of night this has become. Iron sits. That's the first time in 4 hours he actually sits, and his body registers it immediately. The ache across his lower back, the tightness in his ribs, the way his hands won't fully stop their low-level tremor even when he presses them flat against his knees. The baby is still. He takes that as information and keeps breathing. Cashin opens his secondary laptop at the table across the room. He pulls the full Genesis lineage file, the access logs, the Shell Foundation documents Ashford cross-referenced, and begins assembling it into a single record. No explanation, just work. Noctis stands at the far wall with his arms crossed, watching Cashin work. There is something in the way he watches that Iron reads, after a long quiet moment, as the specific look of a man who is deciding whether to be angry at his brother or grateful that his brother is still functional. He appears to arrive at a temporary truce with both options. Riven comes back into the room. He sets a tablet on the table without sitting down. Wren has been the operational lead of what the Shell documentation calls the Council, he says. Based on what Cashin's trace surfaced and what my contact was able to pull in the last hour, the Council is not a new structure. It's been active for at least 20 years. Primarily East Coast, primarily operating through legitimate institutional covers. Medical research, philanthropic endowments, political advocacy foundations. Ashford, who has traveled with them to the safe house and now sits at the far end of the table with his hands folded, nods once. That matches the archival notation on the research documents. The Council funded the original ER lineage study. The methodology, the sample tracking, the long-term succession planning, all of it traces back to the same organizational fingerprint. They funded it, Iron says, and Wren runs it. He became the operational lead approximately 8 years ago, Riven says. Before him, the structure was more diffuse. He consolidated it, made it more targeted, shifted the focus from broad lineage mapping to specific acquisition. Specific acquisition, 2 words that mean a human being was identified, positioned, monitored, and finally approached through the architecture of a legitimate marriage contract. 2 words that describe what was done to Iron as though it were an item moved between columns in a ledger. The triplets themselves were part of this system, Cashin says without looking up from the laptop. The room goes quiet in a different way. He keeps his voice even. Our family line, the original bonding contract that structured our succession, I found evidence in the archival documents that the Blackthorn triplet emergence was studied by the Council's predecessor organization. They didn't create us, but they documented us. And when the ER lineage study identified Iron's bloodline as the compatible match for sustained triplet alpha production. He pauses. The marriage wasn't a political arrangement that happened to connect two powerful families. It was a constructed convergence. They built the conditions for it and let everyone inside it believe it was organic. Iron looks at Riven. Riven looks at the wall. Noctis exhales through his nose. None of them chose this. Not the marriage. Not the distance that grew inside it. Not the quiet, compounding belief that what they had was already failing. A belief manufactured through isolation and a forged medical file and a system designed to keep them separated while the pregnancy it needed proceeded without interference. The pup was always the point. All three of them, Riven, Cashin, Noctis, were the mechanism. Iron was the vessel. The child was the product. Nobody in this room is going to let that stand. Iron watches that understanding move through all three alphas at the same time and feels the temperature of the room change. Riven picks up his phone. I want Ren's full network exposed by morning, he says into it. Every funding channel, every shell registration, every medical facility that took council money, everything. He looks at Iron while he says it, and Iron looks back. The divorce papers, wherever they are now. Still on the penthouse conference table probably, still in the folder, still tabbed and waiting. Feel like something from a different life. Not even a different week. A different person's story. Then Cashin stops typing. He looks at the screen. The DNA results from Ashford's initial workup came back. Everyone looks at him. The pup is confirmed as all three of ours. He pauses. But there's a secondary marker in the genetic profile. He reads the screen again, making sure. The unborn child carries the ER designation. The same bloodline tag. The same lineage profile. Silence. Ashford is the one who says what that means. The council isn't just after the child as an heir, he says carefully. They want the child because the child is the next generation of the bloodline. The study doesn't end with Iron. It was never going to end with Iron. The council's order for forced extraction comes through on an intercepted channel 40 minutes later. Senator Darius Olcott Wren has just authorized it personally. The rain starts at 2 in the morning and doesn't stop. It hits the roof of the safe house in long, steady sheets, and for the first hour Iron just listens to it. He is sitting in the corner of the back room on a low couch with a blanket someone. He thinks Noctis, though he didn't see it happen, placed over his legs at some point in the last 30 minutes. His shoes are off. His hands are finally still. The baby is moving. Not stress movement this time. Something slower and more deliberate, the kind of shifting that happens in the hours Iron privately thinks of as the quiet hours, when the noise of the day has settled enough that the only thing that needs attention is what's right in front of him. He puts his hand over the movement, holds it there. Riven comes in from the front room without knocking. It's his building, and that kind of consideration is not something Riven operates on instinctively. And then stops just inside the doorway when he sees Iron sitting awake. He doesn't say anything. Neither does Iron. After a moment, Riven crosses the room and sits in the chair across from the couch. Not close. Not distant. The specific distance of someone who is not sure what the right distance is and is choosing the middle of the available options rather than the wrong end of either. He looks at Iron's hand on his belly. Something in his face shifts. Not soft exactly, but open in a way Riven's face rarely allows itself to be open. Does it hurt? He asks. It takes Iron a moment to understand the question. Carrying. No, not the way people expect. This pressure, mostly. Wait. Riven nods. I didn't know, he says. Not as a defense. As a statement of record, delivered to the floor rather than to Iron's face. About the diagnosis. About what they told you in that suite. I knew something changed after the gala, but I didn't. He stops. Starts again. I read the distance as something I had done. Or failed to do. I convinced myself you had decided the marriage wasn't worth it, and I told myself that was a rational conclusion given how we'd handled the year leading up to it. Iron watches him. It wasn't rational, Riven says. It was me not wanting to ask the question in case the answer confirmed it. That lands differently than Iron expected, because he knows that particular calculus. He ran the same one. He told himself the silence from their side was confirmation that they had never really wanted him there, and he didn't ask because asking and getting the wrong answer would have been worse than not asking at all. Two people doing the same thing on opposite ends of the same silence. Both of them building walls out of an assumption they were too afraid to test. Noctis appears in the doorway. He looks between Riven and Iron, reads the room in the way Noctis reads rooms. Quickly, completely, without announcing what he's concluded, and comes in. He sits on the floor with his back against the wall, close to Iron's end of the couch. Not because there are no other seats. By choice. Cashin follows a few minutes later. He stops at the doorway. He doesn't come in. He leans against the frame, arms crossed, and Iron looks at him and then looks away and then back again because the anger is still there and the understanding is also there and both of them are true at the same time, and that is just what tonight is. Cashin stays in the doorway. He doesn't ask for more than that. Noctis reaches out without looking and sets his hand over Iron's bare foot through the blanket. It isn't a gesture that has language attached to it. It's just contact, presence. The specific kind of thing that doesn't need to be explained to mean something. For the first time in 8 months, Iron lets himself not be alone in the room. For the first time in 8 months, the quiet doesn't feel like abandonment. It feels like a room full of people who are trying. Outside, the rain keeps coming. Inside, they sit together in the kind of silence that is not empty. The kind that has weight and warmth and something building in it that none of them are ready to name out loud yet. But it's there. Between the four of them, in this room, in the middle of the worst night any of them have had. It's there. Ashford appears briefly, confirms Iron's vitals are stable, exchanges a look with Riven that Iron doesn't fully catch, and disappears back to the front room. The DNA confirmation sits on Cashin's laptop screen. 3 fathers. 1 child. 1 bloodline that a 20-year criminal structure has decided it owns. The pup moves again under Iron's hand. He presses back, gently. I know, he thinks. I know. Cashin's laptop pings from the doorway. He turns and looks at it. His face changes. The secondary genetic marker in the pup's profile, he says. I ran it against the council's full research archive. The marker doesn't just confirm the ER lineage. He reads the screen. It shows an expression pattern that doubles the bloodline's capacity. The child isn't just a continuation of Iron's lineage. He looks up. The child is a more powerful version of it. The room absorbs that. And then the safe house explodes. Not the whole building. The east-facing exterior wall of the front room, the wall between the front entrance and the main hallway, takes a shaped charge detonation that blows the frame inward in a single compressed burst. Plaster. Concrete dust. The sound of it erasing everything else in the world for approximately 4 seconds. Then the dust settles. Then the ringing starts. Iron is on the floor. He doesn't remember getting there. Noctis is over him, covering him, body between Iron and the debris field, and Riven is already moving toward the blown wall with something in his hand that did not come from the room they were just sitting in. Cashin is gone from the doorway. The rain keeps falling through the new hole in the wall. And somewhere beyond it, in the dark and the wet, people are moving. Riven fires twice through the breach before the dust has fully cleared. Controlled. Measured. The kind of fire that comes from a man who is not panicking, who is angry in the cold, functional way that makes every action precise. Noctis gets Iron to his feet in one motion, arm locked under his, and moves him backward through the interior hallway toward the building's secondary core. Stay low, he says. Don't stop moving. Iron stays low. He does not stop moving. His heart is doing what hearts do in detonation situations, everything all at once. But his body has a different set of instructions and it follows them. He keeps one hand pressed to his belly because it is the only thing grounding him to the fact that right now, moving is not optional. Cashin comes from the eastern corridor, appearing out of a room Iron didn't know was accessible. He's holding the laptop, closed, tucked against his forearm, and a drive in his other hand that he passes to Noctis without stopping. The archive, he says. Everything we pulled tonight. That doesn't leave the building without us. Noctis takes it. They move. The secondary core is a reinforced interior room. No exterior walls, no windows, concrete on four sides, the kind of space that was built into the structure specifically because whoever built it understood what it might someday need to withstand. The door seals with a magnetic lock and a secondary bolt that requires two physical keys operated simultaneously. Riven has both keys. He locks them in. The sounds from the outer structure settle into something Iron can map without seeing it. Controlled entry through the breach, multiple teams, the specific rhythm of people moving through unfamiliar space trying to reach a target they can hear but not yet see. They know where Iron is. They've always known. That's what the transmitter was supposed to counter. And then Iron's hand goes to his jacket pocket and finds the compact GPS device Noctis gave him on the freight elevator, and his stomach drops. The transmitter, he says. Noctis is already looking at it. It pings to our secure channel, Noctis says. Not theirs. Unless our secure channel has been. It hasn't. Noctis says it with the certainty of someone who has already run this calculation. I switched the transmission key when we left the tower. Pings to a single device. Mine. He holds up his phone. No relay. No external server. Iron breathes. From above the sealed room, the building's upper floor, they hear it. Movement. At least 4 bodies, possibly 6. Moving in formation, not urgently. They are clearing the building floor by floor because they are not sure which room. They have time. Not much. Riven opens his phone. The call connects in 2 seconds. Location is compromised, he says into it. We need extraction. West side. Secondary exit, now. A pause. I know it's 2 in the morning. Move. Cashin has the laptop open on the floor, running something on battery power. Iron watches him work for 30 seconds before he understands what it is. Cashin is uploading. Not internally. To a public server. What is that? Iron asks. The full council archive. The Genesis lineage file. The Shell Foundation records. The access logs with Ren's account history. The original research documents. He keeps typing. Every piece of evidence we have. Uploaded to a secure journalistic repository with a 12-hour delayed release and 3 independent verification contacts. He glances up. If we don't cancel the upload in 12 hours, it publishes automatically. The room above them goes quiet. They've stopped moving. Which means they've found the sealed door. 3 seconds. Then the sound of someone working the exterior lock mechanism with something that is not a key. Riven moves to the door. Positions himself at the hinge side. Says nothing. Noctis positions himself on the opposite side of the room with Iron behind him. One hand pressed flat to the sealed door. The other maintaining contact with Iron without looking. Cashin keeps typing. The progress bar on the upload moves. 62%. 70. Then the door seal breaks. It doesn't explode. It pops, the magnetic lock overridden by something that knew exactly how the mechanism worked. The door swings, and the man who steps through is wearing a Senate security badge. He's followed by 2 others. No weapons drawn. They are not here to shoot. They are here to collect, and they are here with documentation, papers, and injunction, the kind of official-looking architecture that is designed to make resistance look like the illegal act. Behind them, just inside the threshold, stands Senator Darius Olcott Wren. He looks exactly the way he looks on camera. Composed. Reasonable. The face of a man who has spent a career making bad things look like good governance. He looks at Iron. Then at the laptop. Then back at Iron. This is a medical protection order, he says, and his voice is smooth and even. under emergency biological welfare provisions. Given the genetic significance of the pregnancy and the documented instability of the current custody arrangement. Upload complete, Cashin says. Ren stops talking. Cashin turns the laptop screen toward him. 12-hour countdown. 3 journalist verification contacts. A note that the cancellation key has already been divided into 3 parts held by 3 independent parties who have no connection to any Blackthorn operation. You pull us out of this room, Cashin says, and in 12 hours every Shell Foundation, every council funding record, every communication between your private accounts, and the access nodes in our system goes to 4 major outlets simultaneously. He pauses. The research on Iron. The research on us. The lineage study. Everything. Ren looks at the screen. Looks at Cashin. His composure doesn't break. But something behind his eyes does. The specific break that happens when a plan that has been running for 20 years meets the one contingency it was not designed for. You were subjects, he says, and his voice is less smooth now. All of you. The triplet emergence, the lineage compatibility, the succession architecture, you were built out of 50 years of research. You think you have the right to end it. We have the receipts, Noctis says flatly from the corner. That's all we need. Then Iron steps forward. Nobody moves to stop him. Maybe because of the belly. Maybe because of the look on his face. He stands in front of Darius Alcott Ren, 48 hours ago a senator, and says very quietly, You poisoned me to test me. You forged my medical records to isolate me. You sent men into a tower tonight to take my child. He holds Ren's gaze. You don't have a program anymore. You have a news cycle. Then Iron's knees go. Not collapse. Not fear. Labor. Real, immediate, no more waiting labor. Noctis catches him before he hits the floor. Riven spins from the door. Ren takes 1 step backward. And the power in the building cuts. Complete dark. Total. The heartbeat monitor Ashford has been running from the front room. The small handheld unit he set up 3 hours ago as a precaution goes silent. In the dark, nobody speaks. Nobody breathes. Then Iron's voice, low and steady and present. Somebody better find Ashford. The power comes back in 17 seconds. Generator kicking in. Emergency circuit. Fluorescent flicker, then steady. Ashford is already through the door. He came in behind Ren's team. In the confusion of the breach he had moved through the east corridor and held position. And now he is through the door and across the room in a way that makes the space between him and Iron collapse faster than seems possible. He's carrying the field kit. He has always been carrying the field kit. On your back, he says to Iron. Not unkind. Precise. Iron goes on his back. Noctis is there. He doesn't leave, doesn't move to a different wall. Just stays close and lets Iron's hand find his forearm and holds that grip without comment. His knuckles go white. He doesn't say anything about that either. Riven stands at the door. He is the door now, physical, total, a wall between what is happening in this room and anyone who believes they still have a claim on what comes out of it. Ren and his 2 men have not left. They are standing against the far wall in the specific stillness of people who are watching something happen that has made all of their documentation irrelevant. Medical emergency supersedes injunction. Everyone in the room knows this. Even Ren knows this. Cashin moves to Iron's other side. He doesn't ask. He doesn't explain. He just gets there and he stays there, and when Iron's grip reaches for something on the left, Cashin's hand is what it finds. Iron does not push him away. The next 42 minutes are not easy. They are not the kind of thing that can be made clean or cinematic or summarized into a single moment. There is pain. Real, extended, present tense pain. There is Ashford working with the precision of someone who has spent 11 years being prepared for the worst-case version of every situation. There is Noctis, who does not move once, whose grip stays steady even when Iron's tightens past the point of comfort. There is Riven, who does not leave the door for 42 consecutive minutes. And there is Cashin, who keeps his voice low and his presence constant, and who says almost nothing except, twice, at the moments that seem hardest. Still here, the pup arrives at 4:47 in the morning. Alive, healthy. 3 lungs worth of sound coming out of a body that was never supposed to exist, according to a forged document delivered by a woman who no longer has an address. Ashford places the newborn on Iron's chest, and for approximately 10 seconds the room contains nothing except the sound of a child that everyone in it would have died to protect. Wren says nothing. His 2 men say nothing. At 4:49, Riven turns from the door and looks at the senator for the last time. "The upload went out 4 minutes ago," he says. Cashin moved the timeline. Wren closes his eyes. Not dramatically. Not with performance. The simple, final gesture of a man who has just watched 20 years of architecture become tomorrow morning's front page. The council's network begins to surface in the news at 6:18 a.m. By 8 a.m., 3 shell foundations have suspended operations. By noon, Senate Ethics Oversight has opened a formal inquiry. By the following morning, Darius Olcott Wren has retained crisis legal counsel and is no longer answering calls from his office. The false medical systems, the forged records infrastructure, the private clinic network, the research repositories tied to council funding, begin collapsing under public and regulatory scrutiny. Dr. Maren Lyle is located 11 days later, living under a different name in another state. She agrees, quickly, to full cooperation with federal investigators. The fertility specialist who told Iron he would never carry a child sits across from a federal attorney and explains, in clinical detail, the exact language she was given to deliver. Every word of it was scripted. Every word of it was a lie. Iron reads the transcript sitting in a chair by a window with the baby asleep on his chest. The building they're in is not a tower. It's a house, actual neighborhood, actual street with actual trees on it. Noctis found it. He didn't say much about why he chose it. He just said the light was good in the mornings. He was right about that. Riven comes in with coffee he made himself, which is an activity Iron has never once seen him perform and which apparently requires more concentration than running a federal-level criminal operation, based on the expression he walks in wearing. He sets a cup down next to Iron's chair without saying anything and then looks at the baby. He looks at the baby for a long time. Then he says, very quietly, "What's the name?" Iron has been thinking about this. Not the names that were listed in the old contract documentation, the succession names, the heritage names, the names that came with the architecture of everything that was built around this child before this child was even real. A different name. Soren, he says. Riven repeats it once under his breath, then nods. Cashin comes in from the hallway, stops at the door, looks at Iron with the specific expression that has replaced the mask. Not guarded, not calculated, just present and a little uncertain, the way Cashin looks when he is not performing certainty. "I owe you 8 months, he says. "You owe me honesty," Iron says. "Going forward." A pause. "I can do that. Then we start from there." Noctis drops onto the couch across the room without ceremony and closes his eyes. He was up all night and the night before that and probably the night before that too. He has not complained about any of it. He will not. That is just how Noctis is. Soren sleeps on Iron's chest. Outside, the morning light comes in through the windows the way Noctis said it would. Iron looks down at the face of the child that a 20-year program believed it owned. This small, complete, entirely unremarkable face that is also the most important thing that has ever happened in this room. And thinks about the file. R7. A designation. A data point. A variable in someone else's experiment. He thinks about 8 months of mornings built on a lie. 8 months of believing something was gone from him that was never gone. 8 months of treating distance like confirmation when it was construction. Something built around him and called his fault. He was never broken. He was hidden from himself. That is not the same thing. And now he knows the difference. He looks up at the 3 men in this room. Riven in the doorway with coffee, Cashin leaning against the frame deciding whether to come the rest of the way in, Noctis already asleep on the couch, and feels something he did not feel for 8 months. Not saved. He doesn't need saving. Not forgiven. He didn't do anything that required it. Just found. Like the version of himself that existed before the forged folder and the white room and the long, quiet erosion. Like that version had been waiting in a room somewhere, patient, unhurt, ready to be walked back into. He gets to walk back into it now. Soren shifts on his chest. Iron adjusts his arm. Holds on. Across the city, in a building that is already being investigated by 3 separate oversight agencies, a surviving member of the council's inner circle opens a laptop in a room that has no connection to any official network. He navigates to a file partition that was never uploaded, never indexed, never included in Cashin's archive because it was never accessible from the Blackthorn server. He opens the file. 3 words. Second Air exists. He closes the laptop, and he makes a call. If you've been watching from the beginning, thank you. Leave a comment below and tell me, did you trust Cashin from the start? Or did he have you nervous the entire time? Be honest. And if the story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear that the truth survives. Subscribe and turn on notifications because the stories on this channel are not finished. There is more coming, and you don't want to be the last one to know what happens next. Your comments keep these stories alive. Every share puts this in front of someone who might need it today. See you in the next one.